You are now listening to theGrio's Black Podcast Network, Black Culture Amplified.
Hi, and welcome to the Blackest Questions. I'm your host, Dr. Christina Greer, politics editor for theGrio and associate professor of political science at Fordham University. In this podcast, we ask our guests 5 of the Blackest Questions so we can learn a little bit more about them and have some fun while we're doing it. We're also going to learn a lot about Black history, past and present. So here's the way this works. We have 5 rounds of questions about us, Black history, the whole diaspora, current events, everything. With each round, the questions will get a little bit tougher, and the guest has 15 seconds to get it right. If they answer the question correctly, they will receive 1 symbolic black fist and hear this. If they get it wrong, they'll hear this. But we'll still love them anyway. After the 5 questions, there will be a black bonus question at the end just for fun. Our guest for this episode is Marc Lamont Hill. He's a professor, author, activist, and television personality. A Temple University alum, Dr. Hill also received his PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, and he's a proud Philly native and owner of Uncle Bobby's Coffee and Books. That is one of my favorite bookshops. And you know I'm a Philly girl myself, so I am so excited to have you here, Marc. Thank you so much for joining the Blackest Questions.
Oh, I am very, very happy to be here, although I gotta tell you, I'm a little nervous.
No, don't be nervous, like Philly people will never, ever, ever let you down.
That's
It's gonna be great. So let's just jump right into it.
I'm ready.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's get started. So the votes are in. A few months ago, Ketanji Brown Jackson was the first Black woman to become a Supreme Court justice, but in 1967, he was the first Black Supreme Court justice. Who was he?
I'm gonna go with Thurgood Marshall.
That's right. He was nominated by my favorite president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, and he served on the highest court in the land from 1967 through 1991. But before that, he graduated from Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, then Howard Law School, and he died January 24th, 1993, when he was 84 years old. So when you think of Thurgood Marshall, what sort of comes to your mind? Because, I remember growing up and just having this reverence for him. He seems so tall and debonair, but so brilliant. And that was before I even knew about his landmark civil rights cases. So when did you sort of first learn about Thurgood Marshall?
I knew about him, growing up in Philly, all the Lincoln people and, of course, Howard people were claiming him. So I knew a decent amount about him in that way. When I started to learn about Brown versus Board of Education and, how significant a role he played in 54 and in 55, I was, I became even more sort of an admirer of his. But I think you mentioned in 91 when he leaves the court, I was thinking about how he could have just waited another 18 months, another 20 months. To Bill Clinton became president, and then we wouldn't have Clarence Thomas.
Right.
So I love me some Thurgood Marshall, but sometimes he was the first justice I wish could have hung on a little longer or left a little bit earlier. Now I understand he would have had to leave in the Carter administration. So I understood why he was hanging on. Maybe he thought George H.W. Bush was going to win re-election, so he's like, I can't wait anymore. He obviously passed, but. If I was him, and I couldn't be, I'm not that smart, I would have hung on with Bush and Reagan as presidents. I would have hung on. I would have died in that seat.
Right. But I think you make a really interesting point, though, because there is this incumbency advantage. And George H.W. Bush, by and large, was, people were like, he's not that bad. He made a fatal flaw where he promised not to raise taxes, and he had to for the good of the nation at the time. And so all of a sudden we see this young upstart with a rap sheet of scandals coming out of nowhere from Arkansas. So yeah, I'm sure Thurgood Marshall was like, I can't hang on for another 5 years, basically.
Right.
But then he's sort of like the anti-RBG, where it's like, I feel like, he left too early. We're RBG. I'm like, hey, sis.
Right.
You knew that the times were getting tough. You didn't want to retire and spend some time with your grandkids?
Right. She had an exit strategy. She could have left. Right. And didn't. And some of that was about the desire to wait for Hillary initially,
yes.
right? Was that the idea?
Yes.
And I'm like, we don't have that luxury.
No.
We don't have that luxury. The stakes are too high. You got to go when it's time to go.
Absolutely. But now we have Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is, as we've seen time and time again, justices keep getting appointed at younger and younger ages so they can stay longer. What are you most excited about in a Ketanji Brown Jackson court? Even though she's most likely going to be in the minority in many opinions, but
Absolutely. For me, it's just the momentum. Well, two things. One, she's a very smart jurist, which I think is important. I think that anyone would agree that she's thoughtful and careful, that she's well read and well trained. And when I watched her confirmation hearings, I was overwhelmed and impressed by her poise and her responses. Because as she's talking, you could hear what she was thinking as a Black person. You could hear what she wanted to say. So
listen, there's so many Black women. We were her translators. Like, listen,
exactly.
Ask me that question again. Keep asking me that question.
Exactly. That's why I love Twitter, because I was watching Black women translate for her, and it was perfect. And so I appreciate that. But also, again, a young left-leaning jurist, I think, is significant right now, given everything that's going on in the world. And so I'm not hopeful of any bad thing befalling anybody on the court. But if Clarence Thomas were to slip on a banana peel right now, you know what I mean? We'd have even more momentum if Joe Biden is able to replace the next appoint rather is the next Supreme Court justice. And I like this idea of appointing people who are young and vibrant and who will have a long time on the court. That means a lot to me.
Well, I agree. The only thing is, it's like Brett Kavanaugh's young, Amy Coney Barrett's young. It goes both ways, unfortunately. But I do think that, if we could also get a court that looks a little more representative of the United States. I always ask my students, like, do you think it's fair that 9 people represent 330 million? and the responses they get, because so many of them don't see themselves represented in any capacity, not just descriptively, but even ideologically in some ways. Okay, so you ready?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to keep it moving.
I'm getting nervous.
No, don't you be nervous.
At least I got one. I was going in here like, I need at least one.
You got at least one.
Right.
You got to earn that PhD.
Exactly.
And now you can let your parents listen to this, right? You have it
exactly.
Okay, so this one, let's see. Name the musical group that was formed in 1987. They currently consist of 12 members. They hold 3 Grammys, an Oscar, and serve as the house band for Late Night with Jimmy Fallon.
The Roots.
The Roots. So the first 2 members of the group were Questlove and Black Thought, where they met in high school. They went to the Philadelphia High School for Creative and Performing Arts. I believe that's where Boyz II Men went as well.
That's right.
They added members along the way. They have 14 studio albums. I actually, when I was doing this research, I did not know that. And their first album, Organics, was released in 1993. So we were in high school. Their most recent was in 2014. And some of the soundtracks they've appeared on were Men in Black, The Wood, The Best Man, Blade 2, and the Hamilton mixtape. I mean, listen, I've loved The Roots for a really, really long time. And I know you're a Philly boy. Are you a Roots fan?
I'm a huge Roots fan.
I mean...
Everything they do, every place they go, I try to support. I love Amir and Tariq or Black Thought and Questlove. Personally, as friends, I think they're dope people, really sincerely dope people. But they're such great artists with such longevity. Organics was that album that people didn't really know about, but that was back when they were the Square Roots, and people thought that they were this underground hip hop group that may pass. They had a buzz, but people didn't know, right? And then as Philadelphia, Philadelphia Half-Life and my brain is freezing, but the one that had Silent Treatment on it.
Yes. Do You Want More?
Once those songs hit, they got even more of a buzz. Do You Want More? Thank you. That's what I was trying to think of. Do You Want More than Philadelphia Half-Life? And by the time they got to Things Fall Apart, with that beautiful cover and Erykah Badu, singing the hook on You Got Me, and Eve doing the rap, even though she wasn't named. Like, it was like, oh, they on to something, and then they got a little more mainstream buzz with some songs, Break You Off and stuff like that, the Best Man soundtrack as well. And like, I just love them. But what I love about them is how creative they are and how boundary pushing they are. Both of them, really all of them, even Malik B and Dice Raw and James Poyser, all of them, Hub, who just passed away. Like, I love all those dudes, man, because they're all so creative and gifted and hard working. These dudes was doing 300 tour dates a year.
Yes, I mean, when you talk about college shows and festivals and you name it, I mean, they really, I think, sowed the seeds. Like when people say they're Roots fans, it's like, yeah, they earned those fans. They were doing
Everyone.
every single, college campus across the United States, and then they were going to Europe. I mean, I think that the album cover for Things Fall Apart is when I realized I like them more than the music. And I was like, these guys are actually really well read and thoughtful in a way that I kind of knew it, but it made me go back and re-listen to their albums in a whole new way. And then they've just expanded. And I always love, and this is, I guess, with time and as we get older, we've now known each other for quite some time, how, let's just take Questlove. He's gone into like the food world. And like, I have some of his beautiful coffee table sort of food books, to say nothing about that Oscar for Summer of Soul, where,
Yes.
I wrote an op-ed asking him. And so listen, next time you text him and say, Chrissy Greer wants you to, I really want him to create a website for all of our parents to upload their pictures from the 60s and the 70s when they were wearing those afros and those mini skirts and they were listening to that music in real time. Because when I watched it with my friend's mom and aunt, they started going through their phones and pulling out pictures of themselves. Like he tapped into something that reminded them of that happiness, even though it was rough times politically. We know that. But I think Questlove really did tap into the beauty of Black people in that moment.
The Panthers were the security and didn't expect a crowd like that,
despite what was going on around them. And I think we have to tap into that now with all the madness that's going on around us.
Absolutely, man. The Summer of Soul was a great kind of story being told of culture and art, and the backdrop of politics is there too. And I loved it. And I loved watching it, and I loved experiencing it. And I actually went. It was the only time I've been to a movie theater since the pandemic started. I was like, I gotta go to Harlem and watch it. There was only about 4 people in the theater, but I was like, this movie has to get watched. I wanted to experience it in a certain kind of way, and it was worth it, man. It's so beautiful, and their love of Black people and their curation of content that shows us at our best. I mean, imagine being one of the best drummers of your generation and saying, you know what, I gotta open restaurants. I gotta write books on food. I gotta write an amazing memoir, Mo Meta Blues. I gotta go, I gotta direct a film, right? And imagine being, in my mind, one of the top 5 MCs of all time, Black Thought, and saying, you know what, I'm gonna make plays. I'm gonna write plays. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like they're committed to doing art and stretching the boundaries in a way that inspires me every single day. Like I literally watch them and be like, yo, I need to do something else. I got 1 million jobs. They got like 5 million jobs. And their jobs
after they worked all those years.
After they worked. I mean, this summer, man, I was like, they work every day, 5 days a week at least, doing Jimmy Fallon. They make albums, they produce, they do all this stuff. And it was like, I think it was 4th of July weekend. We were down at a Dumbo House, and my partner and I, we were at Dumbo House in Brooklyn. And who's DJing but Questlove? Like he walked in and I was like, oh, he's here to kick it. Nope.
Right. No. To say nothing of, he's always DJing in Brooklyn. I mean, I think he also wants to have access to the community, and he wants the community to have access to him. It's like, I'm y'all. Like, I may be on television, I may make movies, but here we are. Okay, so we basically, the two of us should just have a podcast called We Love the Roots and
right, exactly.
leave it at that. Okay, you ready for number 3?
I think so.
You're doing well. You're 2 for 2.
They get harder though. I already know I'm gonna get at least 2 wrong.
Okay, this person is credited as the co-creator of the High Five, was standing in the on-deck circle when Hank Aaron broke the home run record, and is the first African-American manager to win 2,000 games. Who is he?
Oh, I don't know this. Let me think. He was standing. So he wasn't a manager when Hank. Okay, I see what you're saying. So if I were guessing, I would say Dusty Baker.
That's right, brother. That's right. Dusty Baker. As a player, Dusty played 19 seasons. He was a two-time All-Star and won a World Series with the Dodgers. He was also the first manager to win division titles and make the playoffs with 5 different teams. And he's been the manager of the Houston Astros since 2020 and made his second trip to the World Series as manager in 2021. So that is Dusty Baker. Now, are you a baseball fan?
I am. What confused me was I was thinking that he was a manager when Hank Aaron was.
Gotcha.
That's why I was like, who's that old to be doing that? And still,
right, still rocking it.
That old. Yeah. I am a baseball fan. Baseball was my first love, both watching it and playing it. And I wasn't that good, but I enjoyed it. And my dad, my dad was born in 1929. So, basketball wasn't a thing for him.
Right.
He came to like basketball, but when he was growing up, the NBA wasn't around yet.
Right, as we're all learning from Winning Time. It was like in the 70s and 80s, they're barely holding on.
Exactly. My dad's older than the NBA, or was older. He passed away last year. So when we were growing up, we would watch the baseball game, and we would sit on the porch and listen to the baseball game on the radio. So, my oldest memories of sport are sitting on the porch listening to pitch counts, with the Phillies with like Mike Schmidt in the 1980s.
Wow. What I'm always fascinated by? The number of Black people who were into baseball, grew up listening to baseball, watching baseball, playing baseball, but it doesn't seem as though a lot of young Black boys really play baseball the way they did, say, in our generation or even my father's generation.
Very true.
And everyone's like, well, there's some class components to it and it's expensive. And, basketball obviously is taken over. But it is really sad to me because there's so many great players from the Negro Leagues who also integrated MLB. But it doesn't seem like young Black boys necessarily are into baseball, say, the way you were as a kid.
It's a couple reasons for that, I think. I think one, is just baseball is not in our neighborhoods, like that. NBA, NFL are far more popular, far more visible. People want to be LeBron. Who is the baseball player that somebody would want to be?
Right. And for us, it was like Ken Griffey Jr., right?
Yep, Ken Griffey Jr. I love Ken Griffey. I love Barry Bonds too. I love Ricky Henderson. And we just don't have those kinds of role models at the same level anymore. But it's also, that the game itself isn't in our neighborhoods anymore. I mean, how many baseball diamonds are there in the hood? And baseball,
and how much has the MLB invested in our hood? Because it seems as though they've gone to the Caribbean and sort of Latin American countries as their new way to invest and repopulate the profession.
That's exactly right. They'd rather go to DR and mine talent there than to come to East New York or something. And it's unfortunate, but it's also about money. I mean, resources. Like baseball is an equipment sport. Like you got to buy cleats, you got to get back. You need baseball. If I want to play basketball, all I got to do is walk to any hood, a few blocks. And somebody's going to be hooping. All you need is a hoop that's already up, right? So you just need a basketball, you know what I mean?
Right.
And you don't need a whole bunch of people and all the things that are necessary to make baseball or hockey happen. Just as, those are two sports that are kind of out of our way. And then baseball lost a lot of fans. After after baseball shut down, after the lockout, this is when Michael Jordan, quit baseball as well. It was very difficult to get people back of all races back into the game. There was a lot of energy in baseball when Barry Bonds and before him, Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire were smashing home runs, out of the stadium, and people looked to them. And then that kind of went away, with all the steroid, debates and controversy, which I still think is unfair to the players. And we ended up ultimately with a sport that kind of like hockey, where the dyed-in-the-wool fans stayed, but a whole lot of folk just don't watch. Mm-hmm. It's enough to keep the sport going and to be lucrative, but it's not enough to grow and expand the way the NBA is.
Right. And I'd be curious to see in the next 10 to 15 years where baseball is, especially in the American imagination, because we've seen, a lot of folks, even though, the blackening of basketball has, had people clutching their pearls, folks are still tuning in a way. I mean, the 3-point game of the NBA right now is enough to just make anyone interested to see what these guys do.
It's high scoring, right? I mean, people like scoring. That's what made baseball kind of have that renaissance, was because people kept hitting home runs and people kept smashing the ball out of the park. When Barry Bonds, went from having 300 plus career home runs to having 700 plus career home runs over a very short window, because he just kept setting new records, setting new records, setting new records. And fans were attached to that. People don't want to watch a baseball pitcher step off the mound 5 times, and they don't want to watch a batter call timeout 3 times and work a pitch count. That's not exciting to people. Just like in basketball, watching a strong defensive team might excite me, but people want dunks and threes.
Right.
And
I want to see Steph Curry get this half-court shot. Let's keep it pushing.
Yep.
Okay, so another podcast idea, Christy and Marc just talk about sports. Because
I love these ideas. I'm down with all of them.
I'm down with all, because you know what? Philly is such a sports town. We grew up, Randall Cunningham was our first Black quarterback. We're coming off of Dr. J. There was Allen Iverson. Like, I just think that, to be a Philly sports fan is to have a really, a frustrating life at some points in time. But we've had some real iconic Black superstars come through our town and really excite us in various ways.
That is absolutely true.
Okay, you ready?
I
You're
think
doing
so.
really well. I'm just, I'm
Dusty
excited.
Baker had me tripped up, so I at least passed, or I don't know if I passed. At least I got a 60 so far. I'll take that.
Yeah, right. The professor in you is like, okay, did I pass this class?
Exactly.
Okay. Number 4, born in Thayer, Nebraska, this person invented ranch dressing around 1950. Who are they?
I have no idea.
So here we go. It's Steve Henson, and he was just in the news not too long ago. He was originally a plumber, but he came up with the recipe when he worked in Anchorage, Alaska, and he moved to Southern California with his wife in 1954 and named his property Hidden Valley. And as the popularity grew over the years, Henson sold it to Clorox, the Clorox company, in 1972 for $8 million. And so he passed away in 2007. So in 2017, Hidden Valley Ranch Products brought in $400 million. So when you're eating your ranch dressing with your buffalo wings and your carrots and celery, that is Steve Henson's invention. And
I would never
know,
eat ranch dressing, but I'm impressed.
But, okay, so here was my question for you, because I was really afraid that I was going to get my black card pulled. I don't like ranch dressing. I support Steve, but I don't like ranch.
The idea of it. I
Right.
want everybody. Now I may even order, because sometimes when you order food, you either have to get blue cheese or ranch. I don't eat either.
Yes.
But I'll order the ranch just to support the legacy of this black man. Right.
Solidarity.
Yes.
It's like we are pro-black people.
Yes.
We will support. I do not like ranch dressing. I don't like anything like that, or my hot wings. But I do, I'm always fascinated with this idea of Black inventions. And I think it does kind of dovetail really interestingly on this like CRT debate of really trying to erase us from history in so many different ways. Because, I think when we were in middle school and elementary school, we learned, usually not in school, but from a relative or church or wherever, about all the inventions that Black people have made, over time that we just didn't know. And, all the the household items and, the traffic light and, all these ways that Black people have contributed to our society in these really robust, life-saving ways in a lot of instances. And we've just never gotten the credit and the solidification of our true accomplishments in this nation.
That is absolutely true. I mean, I had no idea about this brother, Steve Henson, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Making ranch dressing or creating Hidden Valley or any of this stuff. But you're right, it goes so much deeper, right? And it's not just that we miss out on random factoids. It's that there is a concerted effort to kind of hide or at least not engage our history, our tradition, our experiences, And
I think it also goes in the lack of wealth production, which, I know you've talked about and written about extensively. But, to not get the credit is also not to get the financial compensation always for said credit. And yes, Mr. Henson was compensated, but $8 million is not the same as $450 million for a family or a community. Exactly.
And I think about what it means to hold on to our own stuff and to continue to grow and produce it. And I don't know if he could have done that or what that would mean if he had, but I was struck by the number. I'm like $8 million is a lot of money for that time period. When you adjust for inflation, it's a lot of money. He probably was fine for the rest of his life, but he could have held on to something potentially that could have created intergenerational wealth for him and helped invest in Black communities more broadly. Mm-hmm. But you're right, we don't even know that. But we don't even know that. And I also think about the young people who could be inspired potentially by him. Not just in terms of making money, because that's not my thing, but like being inspired to create, being inspired to do things that we never even considered before. I'm actually so glad you told me that. I'm mad I got it wrong, but I'm excited that I learned this fact, and also this idea. I'm glad that we have some solidarity here around not putting a ranch on chicken wings. It just feels wrong to me.
It feels wrong. But I also, the whole point of this podcast, and I so appreciate you coming on, because it's not about making people feel bad about what we don't know, right? It's really to help us remember there's so much about Black history that we can still learn. Beyond MLK and Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, no disrespect to those 4 amazing Americans. However, there are literally millions of Black people who have contributed to our world that we just don't know about, and we should, right? Because to not know Black history is to not know American history, is to not know our history. And that goes for everyone listening to this podcast, whether you're Black or not. Okay, you're doing incredibly well. I think we should move on to number 5.
Okay. This is a big one.
In 2001, and we're academics, so I'm just going to give you a little clue. So in 2001, this person became the first African-American to hold the position of president of an Ivy League school. Who are they, and what school was it?
I was about to say it wrong, too. It's Ruth Simmons, and it is Brown University.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Dr. Simmons. So Ruth Simmons is from Houston, just like Barbara Jordan, and served as Brown University's 18th president from 2001 through 2012. And prior to that, she was the 9th president of Smith College in 1995, and actually spent some time at Smith right after she left. And I tell you, you would have thought that Ruth Simmons was still there, because the shadow of Ruth Simmons was so long. The faculty talked about this woman every day and the innovative changes she made and how she made faculty and students feel like they belonged in this institution in ways. And most recently, she's president of Prairie View A&M. So she goes from the Ivy League to an HBCU to use her talents, resources, and I'm sure her fundraising scrolls to help uplift Black communities. And so Ruth Simmons, for me in academia, has just been, obviously a beacon. But, both of us went to Ivies, and we know that those places can be lonely and cold. And I can't imagine what it's like to be the first president, African-American president of an Ivy League institution.
It's rough, man. It's rough. I mean, I know she was at Princeton before she was at Brown. At one point, she was, I think she's a provost there or a dean. And I've just heard the stories of how consistently how innovative she was, how creative she was, how great her leadership was, her poise, her character, her, all the things you'd want to hear. But you're right, being the only one is never easy in this kind of context. And she's been a trailblazer at all stretches. She created intellectual room for all kinds of traditions and ideas. She's made faculty feel protected. She's made students feel safe and valued and welcomed. I mean, she's extraordinary. And of all the things she's done, all the Ivies she's been at, all the places she's run, the thing, and you pointed to this already, but the thing that mattered to me the most was that when it was all said and done, she went to Prairie View. That she had the ability to go anywhere. She also had the ability to go nowhere. She didn't need a job at that point.
Yeah. I mean, she could just retire. I mean, her legacy is set. Right. She can walk into this room tomorrow and she doesn't need to say or do anything. And we're like, this is Ruth Simmons. Exactly.
But she said, there's a space for me here. There's something, an opportunity, there's a calling I have. And to say, you know what, I'm going to invest my time and my talent and come to fundraising, my treasure, in Black people and in a Black institution. And she didn't have to, but she wanted to. It mattered to her. It was important to her that happened. That to me said everything about who she was. And, I don't think every Black person that needs to teach in HBCU. I think there's Black people in lots of institutions, and they deserve to have faculty too,
Right.
I don't think Black students who go to Fordham shouldn't have a Black professor, or Temple or what have you. But I do think there's some value in making a concerted effort in an attempt to be at an HBCU and to educate us and to lead us. And she took it. And I have such admiration and love for her. But that for me was like, that sent it to another level.
Right. Well, I always tell people, I went to an HWCU, right? The same way HBCUs are historically Black colleges and universities are set up for the production of Black knowledge. I've always gone to universities that were set up specifically for the production of white knowledge. So, you know, and I don't call them PWIs, predominantly white institutions. I call them HWCUs because they're historically white, right? But I do think that it is important for Black students at HWCUs to see Black professors. But I think equally it's important for white students to see Black professors. And I think that was part of Ruth Simmons' legacy at so many of these elite white institutions to understand, you know, most of my students have never interacted with a Black person in a position of power. You know, they've had babysitters or nannies. They've had people in the service industry, but they've never, you know, reported to a Black person. They've never had a Black teacher or professor. So I do think it's equally as important for not just my Black students to see me in the front of the classroom, but for white students to see people who look like us in front of a classroom as well. And I feel like Ruth Simmons put in her time doing that and then was like, okay, well, we can bring it on home. You know, it's like, I don't begrudge anyone who goes from HWCUs to HBCUs and back and forth because I think that there's a space and a need for all of us, yeah?
I agree 100%.
Okay, well, listen, I am very impressed. We got 4 out of 5. I think, you know, an 80 is a respectable, solid. And we're going to think, every time you see ranch dressing, you're going to think about Steve Henson, right? And I hope that it sparks something in you. But before I let you go, we got some quick bonus questions.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm ready.
So.
I'm playing with house money now. I feel good.
Yeah, you know, listen, this is all gravy right now. Better Philly classic, Dreams and Nightmares or Summertime?
Ooh. That is a I'm going to say Summertime.
Okay.
And I'm going to say that only because Summertime has proven to be a classic over 30 years. Whereas Dreams and Nightmares, we can't say yet. Right? I think it will be.
We might have to revisit.
Yeah, I mean, they damn near play it in elementary schools right now at the start of school.
Adjust the bass and let the Alpine blast. Pop in my CD and let me run around and put your car on cruise and lay back, cause it's summertime.
But, like, we'll see what happens.
Okay. Spades or dominoes?
Spades.
Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes or Boys to Men?
I'm going to go with Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes only because you get the double kind of Teddy Pendergrass piece in there, right? So you get like multiple Philly legends that way.
That's right. My little niece loves herself some Teddy P. Martin or Fresh Prince?
Fresh Prince. Martin doesn't hold up to me. Like when you watch Martin now, it's okay. I mean, there's some good episodes. The Varnell Hill episode, the Najee Ramba episode. You know, there's a few. But
the Biggie episode.
Right, exactly. But the Biggie episode is a classic. But like Fresh Prince holds up episode to episode as a sitcom. It's actually still funny.
Now, we're going to have to talk about this offline because I actually went back and rewatched Martin during lockdown. And I think that he is teetering on a comedic genius with all the different characters he played. So we might have to debate that. Because like when I watch Shanae, I don't see anybody but Shanae. I don't see Martin Lawrence at all.
I'll give you that. I think Martin is a comedic genius and a great physical comedian. I think Martin holds up. Martin Lawrence. I don't know if the show holds up. Like when I watch the episodes all the way through, I just don't be cracking up no more. And then there's also the colorism with Pam and Gina.
Yes. There's some there are definitely some problematic pieces. But you know, someone told me a long time ago, who's a child of immigrants, she said that her mother liked Martin. I was like, why is that? And she said, because my mom doesn't speak English and she can follow the show completely without knowing anything that they're saying. Because it's so flamboyantly over the top in their acting. So I don't know. Well,
that's an interesting
observation. Okay, here we go. We got 2 more.
Okay.
Better food, funeral repast chicken or baby shower meatballs?
Funeral repast chicken, for sure.
That's right. In the basement of that church.
Oh my God.
with those sisters.
Yep. I don't want to know how to make
it. Right, exactly. We don't need to know what's in it. All we need to know is that styrofoam plate is holding it together.
Just give me some hot sauce, keep the ranch away, and we good.
We good. Last one, Wawa or 7-Eleven?
Wawa.
Of course.
Wawa. You get your beverage, you can get a pretzel, you can get deli meat, you can get a sandwich. Wawa is the truth. Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Oh, goodness. Okay, well, we got to link up in Philly so we can have a day at Uncle Bobby's bookstore,
Yes.
and then we can hit up Wawa afterwards. Marc Lamont Hill, I just want to thank you so much for joining me, and I want to thank you all for listening to The Blackest Questions. The show is produced by Cameron Blackwell, Justin Sloan, and Richard White. And if you like what you heard, please give us a 5-star review and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcasts, and share it with everyone you know.